Stevens Center kindly requests that all pagers, alarms, and other personal communication devices be silenced for the duration of the event. Thank you and enjoy the performance.
How's everybody doing tonight? Good, good. I'm Tariq. I'm the student body president at UNC School of the Arts. I want to thank you guys for coming out tonight. It's exciting. So, tonight we have a demonstration by Colin Wolfe, and following that demonstration, we'll do a Q&A session. I am sure you guys will have questions. So, that's what we'll do. Just a little warning. During this performance, it does contain some explicit language, all right? So, I'm sure you read that on the entrance coming in, okay? Colin is originally from Los Angeles, and he co-wrote songs on the Chronic album. The album was produced in 1992, which means this year we are celebrating the 25th anniversary, okay? Before I bring Colin out, I'd like to give some little thank yous, all right? So I'd like to thank Wade Wilson, Brian Cole. Yeah, Wade, woo! I'd like to thank Brian Cole, Lindsay Bierman, David English, Dean Wilcox, the Keenan Institute for the Arts, UNC TV, and Moogfest. This shows you the power of collaboration and the unique opportunities we can bring to School of the Arts and the Winston-Salem community. So right? Yeah. So, without further ado, let's bring Colin out, all right? Hey.
What's up, what's up, what's up?
How you doing?
Good, good, good.
All right, so, Colin, could you talk just a little about process and how the album was created and all that? How'd this all happen?
Well, it was created in about 91 to 92, during the time of the riots, actually, in LA. So all that tension and all that stuff actually kind of went into the album. Mm-hmm. So I think that's one reason why the album had such a big impact and why it was just so heartfelt, because it really was heartfelt and there really was a lot of tension in the city at the time, and we kind of translated that into the studio and brought it on tape, put it on tape, basically.
Nice. And what are you going to be showing us tonight?
Well, a lot of the stuff was created on this Moog keyboard, and we used this keyboard because we used to listen to a lot of Parliament and Funkadelic records, and they used the Moog. And so we bought one, but we first started using it during the NWA records. And then, of course, we kept it. When we left that, we started the Chronic album. We're like, we definitely got to use that Moog keyboard on this record. Yeah. So I'll just kind of show you how some of the stuff was created. Wade, right. You want to come on and play some drums?
Let's go.
So usually during the process of while we're in the studio, sometimes we would write down titles of different ideas of stuff we would come up with. But then usually Dre will come up with a beat, and then I sit there for a couple of minutes, listen, and something would just pop in my head, and just come up with a bass line similar to this. Wade, give me that beat. So I'll listen to it for a few minutes, and then just come in right at it. All right. So then I don't know if you guys know, I wish we had the elliptic camera, know the Moog keyboard, but there's different oscillators on here. So now, next I will come up with a melody line to go on top of that. So what I'm gonna do for that is turn off the bottom oscillator, the third one, turn on the first one, and then kick up the second one to about 8. And then, go ahead. So then I would do a melody that would go on top of that. So similar, like something like this. Put a little decay on there. Cool. And that's how we come up with the melody. So then the finished product is something like this. Go ahead and play that, Julian.
Yeah. Hell yeah. Know what I'm saying? Yeah. Mr. Buster. Where the fuck you at? Can't scrap a lick. So I know you got your dick on hard. From fucking your road dogs, the hood you threw up with, niggas you grew up with. Don't even respect your ass. That's why it's time for the doctor to check your ass, nigga. Used to be my homie, used to be my ace. Now I wanna slap the taste out your mouth. Make it bow down to the road. Fucking me, now I'm fucking.
So. So then that's how Dre Day was kind of created. And then another song, I guess was kind of similar, we used the Moog also, was a song called Deez Nuts. And I'm gonna turn off the top oscillator on that one and just use the middle one and the bottom one. And then that'll get me that bottom. And that's how you get that fat bass tone. And as you know, the Moog is a monophonic keyboard, so you can't hit 2 at one time. It's only gonna play 1 note at a time. And so that one, well, the bass line on that one was just. So then we would have the bass line for that, and then I would turn off the bottom oscillator again and go to the top 2 and put the middle one at 8, top one is at 4, and then they would put the melody on top of that one as well. Give it some decay to sustain a little bit. And then that finished product is something like this.
At you yesterday? Deez Nuts.
But I want to ask you one question. If I had some nuts hanging on the wall, what should I have, honey? I'm just darling, you have some wall nuts. She said, well, Daddy, if I had some nuts on my chest, would those be chestnuts? I said, oh, yeah. She said, well, Daddy, if I had nuts under my chin, would those be chin nuts? I said, hell no, didn't you ever dick in your mouth?
Chicky check, microphone check. Chicky check, microphone check. Chicky check, microphone check. 3.
Check game from the notorious Compton G.
With some shit that got the bump. As you pull up in the park, your box is shrunk. Just a fossil like a motherfucker clowning this shit. Got containers on your hoodie and your fly ass bitch. Throw off, show off, I'll take that home. If she proper, I'ma pop up, I won't pop up.
was Deez Nuts. So then we also had one other popular song on that album, and I'm gonna show you how that one was created. A song called G-Thing. So now what we did, I don't know if you guys know who Leon Haywood is, but he had this song called I Want to Do Something Freaky to You. So we played the record, here's the record. So that's the record. So then what we did, we took the first 2 bars, so you cut the bar right at the kick drum, and then you cut it again at the beginning of the 3rd bar. So then you would have this section basically. So you then just loop that. Now then I would just cut and copy that. So then there's your loop, there's your drum pattern. Then I would up on the bass. Now we're old school, so you gotta record it from top to the bottom. Yeah. So your timing gotta be on point. So go ahead and arm that one. All right, go ahead and play the track. Unarm it. All right, so then we would have the bass track. Hold on, let me get the sound first. So now, if any of you guys know the lyrics, go on and rap along to it. There we go. Same thing, I just turned off the bottom oscillator and using the top 2 because I can get a higher frequency with that one. And then if you turn on the decay, you can get a little sustain from it, and you can adjust that with your overall in your filter section. So then go ahead and play that from the top, and Lil J here is going to do some lyrics for y'all.
1, 2, 3 into the 4. Snoop Doggy Doggy Dr Dre is at the door, ready to make an entrance, so back on up, cause you know we about to rip shit up. Give me the microphone first so I can bust like a bubble. Compton and Long Beach together, man, you know you in trouble. Ain't nothing but a G thing, baby. Too low left out people, so we crazy. Death row is the label that pays me. Unfadable, so please don't try to fake me. But back to the lecture at hand. Perfection is perfection, so I'm glad I understand. From a young G's perspective, and before me dig it a bitch, I have to find a contraceptive. You never know, she could be earning her man and learning her man, and at the same time burning her man. And you know I ain't with that shit, Lieutenant. Ain't no loving good enough to get burned while I'm up in it, yeah. And that's realer than real deal, holy deal. And now you hookers and hoes know how I feel. But if it's good enough to get broke off a proper chunk, I take a small piece of some of the funky stuff. It's like this and like that and like this and it's like that and like this and like that and it's like this and like that and like this and it's like that and like this and like that and it's like this and like that and like this and it's like that and like this and like that and it's like this and like that and like this and it's like this. Wait till the next episode.
We got a whole lot of time now. So that's a little demonstration into the Chronic album. Anybody have any questions or anything about the process? I think we have 2 mics here set up. Feel free, come on up.
Hi, how you doing? First of all, thank you for taking the time out to hang out with us and do this.
No doubt.
And walk through the process.
No doubt. Thanks for having me.
I guess, first of all, I guess I would just want to ask, basically, by using the Moog keyboard, and you talk about the influence of Parliament Funkadelic in your playing and what you do. Can you just talk a little bit about what specifically you heard from Bernie Worrell and P-Funk that made you want to continue to use the ideas and push them into the next generation? You know what I mean? Because
Yeah, for sure. It wasn't like we sat down and like listened to the record and just, copied it. I grew up listening to it.
Right.
So it was in me.
Right.
You know what I mean? So when we were coming up with like NWA stuff, or whenever I worked with Dre, our whole thing was to come up with something out there and just crazy and funky. And that's Parliament Funkadelic. That explains them. So we're like, okay, well, how can we incorporate that into our stuff? So me just playing along to their records, kind of knew like the scales and the notes and stuff that they use. So, that's how you have Dre Day. It sounds like it's straight from one of their records, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But I didn't like listen to their record and, just try to modify it. I just did my thing, right. I know their stuff, so but we just wanted to do something crazy and something out there and funky. And that was them. They were psychedelic funk back in the 70s. You know what I mean? I actually was able to work with George Clinton on a record called If Anybody Gets Funked Up. And his son actually did the song first. And then, so the record company, Epic, they heard it. They was like, cool, we like the song, we don't like the music. So then they gave it to Eric Sermon from EPMD. They heard this version, they was like, that's cool. And like, we still don't have it yet. So then they brought it to me, and I crushed it. And they were like, this is it. And that's the one that they actually put out. I wish we had that song. It might be on my phone. See if you can find it on here somewhere. I think you could browse. I don't know. See if you can find it on there somewhere.
I guess while you're looking that up, just like a tie-in question when you mentioned like you knowing the material and knowing the scales that you were using, when you heard their music. I don't know, could you elaborate? I guess specifically as far as scale-wise and mode-wise, maybe just where you were hearing your favorite things and your favorite pieces that you wanted to build upon and expound on?
Right. All their stuff is in minor scales. Uh-huh. You know what I mean? So usually that's usually when you're doing funk and even blues, that stuff is usually in minor scales. And that makes it eerie sounding, you know what I mean? You know what I mean? That's all eerie sounding. That's all minor stuff, you know what I mean? Your minor third. That's just just a minor scale basically. And Dre Day, I'm just walking down from C to G basically. You know what I mean? So it's just all minor stuff really.
Cool.
That's all it is.
Thank you.
Oh, for sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
I guess I won't take up any more time.
You want to go after me? Okay. I was just wondering what workspace you worked in for the album, and then what workspace you work in now.
Studio-wise? Mm-hmm. For the Chronic album, Dre had this big old mansion in Calabasas. I don't know if anybody knows Calabasas, California, but it's a very, how would you describe that? Rural area? It was a gated community. He had this big old mansion with no furniture. The only furniture we had the studio equipment, and he had his bedroom stuff. But we all stayed there, like me, the Dog Pound, DLC, Michelet. Everybody slept in closets, on the floor, in empty bedrooms, wherever you could, but it was just all about the music. Because Dre had just left NWA, so there wasn't no money coming in yet. So I think that's another reason why we were all hungry. So we were putting all our all into that record. And Warren G actually brought Snoop. That's how we met Snoop. So those guys used to get into circles, kind of like battle raps, but they were just having fun. And just off the top of their head, those guys would just go at it. And you think all this stuff was written, but those guys were just dope. But now, I'm in Venice Beach, at a studio called Beacon Street Studios. But our studio then was the studio in Dre's house. That's where we created a few of the records. And then another half, I don't know if anybody knows Solar Records, Temptations, well, not Temptations so much, but I think Lakeside, Babyface in LA, The Deal, and all of them have recorded out this place called Solar Records on Cahuenga. And Solar was still upstairs, and Dre and DLC actually bought the studio part of it. And then that's where we recorded the remainder part of the Chronic album, and the Deep Cover soundtrack was recorded out there as well too. Because we're working on the Chronic album, and in between that, a money opportunity came where we can make some money, and that was the Deep Cover soundtrack. So we put the Chronic album on pause, then record the Deep Cover soundtrack, and then came back and finished up the Chronic album.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. You've already talked about how you work in layers, and obviously you can go crazy with layers. You can put layer after layer after layer, and there's no constraint the way that there would be, say, if you've got a band of Parliament Funkadelic, you've got so many people on stage.
Yeah.
My grandfather was a painter who married also a painter, and they eulogized my grandmother, saying that her genius was knowing when to take the canvas off the easel.
Off the easel, no
Because he
doubt.
would just keep putting layers and layers. And my question to you is, from a process point of view, how did you mediate that addition versus subtraction? Was the music more something that you had to capture from that writing room, or was that music something that really was composed in the seat of the studio?
Composed in the seat of the studio. Usually in this kind of music, you really hear it in James Brown music, where everybody it's very simple. Bass player will just stick on that bass line, the guitar player will have his line. It's like a give and take kind of thing, a call and answer kind of thing is what you want to create. So you have the bass line, and then usually I would have a keyboard part that would just kind of lay the pads, that kind of spell out the chords. And then I would have maybe like a high string part that just kind of going around everything It's kind of similar to how Parliament Funkadelic stuff was. There's all these different parts and different layers that you can create. There are certain parts that can go out through the whole song. It can be one simple part, but it can play out through the whole thing. And that's like kind of like a drone part. You know what I mean? Just have that going. And then you have, of course, you have your melody, and that's what distinguishes the verses from the choruses. So you will kind of try to stay out of each other's way. It basically is what you try to do. And you knew when you were there, you know, and you know when you're doing too much. And we normally didn't get to the point where we're doing too much because we knew when we were there. You don't want to when you're having lyrics on there, you don't want to overdo it because you have to let the verses stick out. You got to break it down on the verses so that the verses can stick out. Otherwise, if you're doing too much, you're doing the verses, you're not going to understand what they're saying. So you want to create a nice simple bed for the verses, and then you bring in the melody for the hooks. And that lets you know we're here at the hook. You know what I mean?
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hey.
Hey.
Thanks again.
No.
I was just wondering if you could give us a little bit of your personal history about maybe how you got started in music and how you ended up meeting Dr. Dre and getting in with all these incredible rappers.
No doubt. Well, the way I got started with music, I guess I was about 3 or 4 years old, and my blind twin cousins used to babysit me and my brother. And they were musicians, and they would try to teach my brother stuff, although he wouldn't pick it up, and I'd be sitting in the back of the room watching them trying to teach him something, and they get frustrated and get up. So I go on the piano and just teach myself what they were trying to teach him. So whatever instruments I was around at the time, I was able to just pick up and just learn. So then when I was in the 6th grade, I was the president of the elementary school, and thank you, and had my friends come play at lunchtime during Halloween. And for some reason, they asked me to play bass on Day Tripper, but I didn't play bass. But the guy who was playing bass let me use his bass to learn the song. So the day of the concert, my mom went to the pawn shop, bought me a bass, and I played bass on Day Tripper. And I think a year later, I started doing professional gigs. So, and that's was my introduction to bass. But in the way I met Dre and them, a guy hired me to play bass for him at this place called the China Club in Hollywood. And I was doing a bass solo, and in through these big double doors walks in Eazy-E, Dr. Dre, Jerry Heller, L.A. Dre, right when I was doing the bass solo, and they were looking for a bass player to go on tour with the artist Miss Chalet. So when I came off stage, of course, they asked me to go on tour with them. And from that day on, me and Dre was together, I don't know, 4 or 5 years straight. Our schedule was Monday through Friday, meet at the studio at 12, work to about whenever, but usually around 7 to 8, maybe 10 or 11, depending on if we had it. First we work on NWA, and then if we had other artists we were working on after that, they would come in afterwards. Maybe we might take a slight little dinner break, which is more like Popeyes or something like that, and then we'd go from there. But Monday through Friday, we took the weekends off, and weekends we relaxed. But during the process of the Chronic album, after we finished each song, we would have barbecues on the weekend, and we'd play the songs for people and watch the reactions to the songs. And that's how we knew what single to put out. Every time we put on a G thing, everybody gave us the same reaction. So we kind of did our own marketing, I guess you could say. You know, and that's how we picked the songs for the album, basically. Right.
Did you know yourself while you were making the music what you had? Or did you have to wait for other people?
Well, we kind of knew. I mean, even though, yeah, they were our friends, but we didn't get that reaction from the other songs that we got from G-Thing every time we played it. But then also, Dre definitely has an ear for music, so he would know. You know what I mean? When something is hidden, he would know. He would definitely know. Did I know the overall impact was gonna have? No. Right after we finished the album, you guys well know of a guy named Suge Knight. That's when once money started coming in, he starts showing, I don't even say the word, but he started showing himself. And I saw that it was more about street and gangster stuff as opposed to the music. So then I took that opportunity. A guy named MC Breed came to me and asked me to go to Atlanta with him. It was the MC Breed and Tupac record, Gotta Get Mine. So I did that record with Warren G and moved to Atlanta even before the Chronic album came out. But then one day I was sitting on the corner, standing on the corner waiting for the light to change. Out of 7 cars drove by, was playing the Chronic album. And I looked at my boy, was like, okay, I guess we got something. So I left before everything kind of hit the fan, but then I hooked up with Dallas Austin in Atlanta, and we worked on Monica, Sammy, Madonna, Michael Jackson, all kinds of different people.
When y'all are working on the Chronic and you got a young Daz Dillinger in there who probably wasn't as musically inclined as you were at the time, and then he winds up, how much did he learn from you, or how much did you teach Daz for him to become the producer he became kind of going forward?
He was there the whole time, so he was definitely, eyes and ears, just watching everything, the whole process. So he definitely picked up, but he had some great ideas too, though, at the time. And of course, he stepped it up, once I left and the Dog Pound album came out and the Dogfather album came out, but he had some great ideas even back then. We were working on one song, or they were working on one song, and I came to the studio late, and they had this drum beat going, and I'm watching Dre and Daz mess around with some bass line at the keyboard, and I'm like, wait, y'all get out the way. This is what y'all trying to do? And then, well, it wasn't this sound, but what was it? Which is Bitches Ain't Shit. And I didn't even have to think about it. I just got on the keyboard and just started playing it. And they're like, oh, that's it. I'm like, hold on, I got another part. And immediately I just started layering the stuff. And it just came out just like that. And then their verses was improv. They just made it up on top, on the spot. So that hook came out of Corrupt's verse. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Hey, thank you for coming. I'm this classical vocalist singing, opera at a conservatory. Just, casual. No, but, I don't want to do opera for the rest of my life. So what are my moves, maybe after college, in college, to kind of get into the industry and not get stuck in the classical world?
I guess get with some producers, some good creative producers. I mean, which nowadays is hard to find.
Yeah.
Because everybody's using Fruit Loops and all that stuff. And nobody's creating anymore. But, I mean, there's definitely a place for you. You know what I mean? It's a matter of the right producer finding you and putting you on some records, because there's definitely been some opera stuff on some different hip-hop records. And I'm sure if producers knew more people like you, they would use you more. You know what I mean? So just finding a good creative producer who actually plays and knows music and understands music. And I think that helped get you out there.
Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt. Yeah.
You kind of talked a little bit about the kind of social, political environment that this album came out into.
Yeah.
How much of an awareness of that, we see it really clearly 25 years later, but how much of an awareness did you have while you were making the record? Just kind of how important it was, and was there any urgency to get it out there while the feelings were still hot?
Once the riots happened, yes. And we actually had some songs on there that we had to change the lyrics to because the record company was not going to let us put those lyrics out. And it was similar to, excuse my English kids, it was similar to Fuck the Police. And we had some stuff that was that strong lyrically and verbally and message-wise, but the record company was not going to let us put that out. But after the riots happened, that was a big influence on the finishing of the album and us trying to hurry up to get it out. But the record, putting out records is a long process. I mean, nowadays it's not, but back then, once you turn in a record, a full record, the label took 3 months to set up your record. They really did their job back then. For promotions and marketing, they would set it all up, take them 3 months. Nowadays, people make a record and it's out tomorrow. So nobody really sets up anything anymore. So even though we had the urgency to put it out, it still had to take its time to come out.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi there. Thanks so much for coming. I'm a trumpet player in the high school program here, and I was wondering, what's the best advice you could give to a young musician in terms of innovating and creating the next new exciting things?
Staying in your own lane, and not getting caught up into what you hear on the radio and thinking you have to come up with something that you just heard or the next pop record. I think that's somewhat the downfall of where the labels are nowadays, and that's why the indie labels are kicking their ass, because they'll take a chance on somebody new and they'll just put out what they want to put out. The labels, they look at the top 20 list and they want the next new artist that sounds just like something they just heard. And that's not going to go far. If you want to break something and make something new, you got to come up with your own sound and your own thing. So basically just sticking with your gut and just sticking with your own thing, coming up with your own sound, and not be influenced by pop radio. I don't even listen to the radio much in my car. I listen to talk show radio because people's ideas will be stuck in my head because I'm like a sponge when it comes to music.
Thank you.
So stay in your own lane.
Dude, I just have to know. Back then, the riots were happening, and there was a whole lot of intensity going on in California in general. How intense did it get working with NWA?
You would think it was very intense, but it wasn't.
No?
They didn't bring that drama to the studio.
Awesome.
Like, I felt really, really, really safe in the studio. Like, none of that was in the studio. Now, when we went out, in clubs and stuff, whole different story.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I've seen that I can't even talk about. But in the studio, nah. Awesome. It was all work, all business.
Good to know.
There was no ever any drama in the studio. Not even not ever. There was no drama in the studio.
All right.
Everybody came there just to make records and have fun and just create. Yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Yeah, no doubt.
How you doing? Thanks again for coming.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts about producers that are in the game now and like their level or lack of like creativity? Because there's some people that do like a lot of sampling, and there's some people that kind of create from their own. So what do you like? Are there any people that you see that are currently doing what you're doing that you appreciate, or anything like that? Like what do you see about like the people that are in the game right now?
Well, some of them are using samples in a cool way. It's not something that I would do. I like to shoot from the hip, and I can, if you're a musician, you can create that sound that they sample from. They do find some interesting stuff. I mean, there are some good records like that, but they're not going to last because they're only as good as the sample they find. You know what I mean? If you're a real musician, you can come up with anything. The sky's the limit. But if you're a sampler, you have no talent, you're only as good as the samples you find.
Are there people that you think that Are there people that you like admire, like people that are in the game right now that whose work you admire?
I couldn't even tell you their names because, like I said, I don't listen to the radio much. It takes friends of mine to play me new stuff, and they won't necessarily know who came up with it. I know a lot of the stuff nowadays is coming from Atlanta, all that trap stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff is cool, you know what I mean? But they all sound the same.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And everybody, back in the day, there used to be a West Coast sound, East Coast sound. There was an Atlanta sound, even Chicago sound. There was a Texas sound with Scarface and Ghetto Boys and all them back in the day. North Cackalack even had a little thing. I mean, Anthony Hamilton's come from North Carolina, so you guys were known for having some soul, you know what I mean? But now everybody's just doing this whole trap thing. But there are artists that aren't doing that are sticking out, like your J. Cole's and, you know, artists like that. So I couldn't tell you who some of those producers are. That whole Mark Ronson, he's coming up with some cool stuff. His stuff is definitely based off of like soul stuff and 70s stuff, which is cool though, because at least he's using live instruments and real musicians. You know what I mean? So, and Bruno, they're doing their thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's some of my homies too. Bruno and my boy Philip. So they're using live musicians, they're using live stuff. So it's still a way, and I think those records sound bigger. You know what I mean? When people use real instruments and live musicians, those records sound bigger than the sampled ones. Because when you see those people perform live, the sample ones, records just sound kind of small. But when the people are up there with a band, oh, they're killing it. Because you have all the energy up there on the stage too. And the sound is much bigger. So.
All right, well, thank you.
Hi, Colin.
Hey, Caitlin, what's up?
How are you?
Good.
So you kind of answered this question a little bit earlier. You're talking about like how music sounds different from different regions.
Yep.
But I wanted to get your opinion on what you think, or when you started to get into the game, how music has evolved from your time to now. Because like you said, a lot of it's talking about, like you said, you called it Fruit Loops, and you said that you know, the music doesn't have any soul anymore, and it's the repetitive tracks. And where do you think it was, and how do you think it progressed, and where you think it's going to go from there?
Well, so even back then when we were making records, there was a West Coast sound and there was an East Coast sound, and all the East Coast records were heavily sampled based, but they found dope samples like your Tribe Called Quest. They used a bunch of dope jazz samples, but they had live musicians too. Ron Carter was playing live bass on that stuff. You know what I mean? So they were using those stuff, but our production, we played everything live from top to bottom. So that was kind of the difference then. We were playing a lot of the West Coast stuff, Too Short stuff, all live musicians. And East Coast always had sample stuff where the drums were always banging. And they found some good obscure records to sample from. And then nowadays, people are using, like I said, this sample base called Fruity Loops. A lot of people are making records based off of that, and a lot of people are just using samples and stuff nowadays, and not everybody is playing records or playing, you know, having musicians on the records like they used to. So there are still a lot of good ones out there. You just have to find them, you know, as opposed to, and I blame a lot of that on the radio, because they play what they want to play. But we have a station out in LA, KCRW, that plays just strange, obscure stuff. And so there are some stations that will play new stuff. And it's out there. You just have to seek it out.
How long do you think it's going to last? Or do you think that, like with Kendrick and with J. Cole, and, you know, like, well, Bruno Mars is starting to get back into the funk and, you know, starting to branch more into that.
It's coming back around.
Yeah.
Because when people hear those records, I think they have a bigger impact, but it's young kids that are listening to these trap records and all that stuff. So we have to kind of get them out of that and get them into listening to real music. And I think, you know, they got to keep music in the schools, because if they keep trying to take music out of the schools, they're not going to know, you know. Some of these kids don't even know what a Moog keyboard is, or a bass, or a drum. You know, they think the drums come from the drum machine, the MPC, or 808, or something like that. So they have no idea.
And do you think, like, lyrics are a part of the issue, too? Because I know, like, lyrically, I mean, seeing the progression from where we've come and where we are now, and, like, how a lot of things are just, like, it's super sexualized, everything's about violence, and, I mean, I don't know if that's, like, a part of the problem, too, with all the stuff that we listen to.
That's a big part of the problem. I mean, there's some dope lyricists out there, like your Talib Kweli's, like your Nas's. It was because the younger kids, I don't know, they don't want to think for some reason. They just want the same lyric that just repeats from beats. They're getting lazy. They don't want to think anymore, you know? So it's up to us to instill messages in them, and, you know, hopefully they get it. And I think most of them will grow out of it, you know, and they just kind of have to live life themselves. But yeah, there's some lyricists out there. There's some dope lyricists out there. So, and you'll see some of them at Moogfest. I know Talib will be at Moogfest. So he'll be someone to definitely go and check out.
Thanks.
Yep, you're welcome. Time is away.
Hey, I'm just curious about your process in actually using the synthesizer when you're coming up with sounds. Do you have like go-to sounds, or do you have times where you just sit down and see what you can get to come out of that thing? And if you could also talk about the role that it has played in your music and the role that you see the analog synthesizer playing in the future of music.
Well, with this Moog, I mean, you can create any sound you want, and that's the beauty about it. It might take you some time, but so you can create whatever sound you want from it. You just gotta play with it, you know? As opposed to a digital keyboard, all the sounds are already there, so everybody can have the same sounds. But with this keyboard, you can create whatever sound you want. You can have your own unique sound. The only problem is you can't come back to it. You know what I mean? So you gotta record what you record, and yeah, I mean, if you have to redo it, you might be ass out.
There's no presets on that thing?
Not on this one. No, so you just kind of, I mean, after messing with that for a while, you kind of learn what everything does, all these functions. Moog does make some programmable keyboards. I think the little fatty, so you can save your presets, but it doesn't sound like this one, the Model D. And I think they just remade these again, and I don't know if they're gonna make any more, so hurry up and get one while you can, because they're not gonna be around anymore. But nothing sounds like this one. Nothing has that bottom like this one does. Anyone else?
Is it true that there were members of the Meters and members of the Isley brothers that played on some of the Chronic stuff that didn't quite make the album?
Well, actually, funny story. Actually, during the NWA, Zigaboo from the Meters, the drummer, came down to the studio while we were working on the NWA record. And so he stuck me and Zigaboo in the studio, and we just started jamming together, and we were just making up stuff on the spot. and none of that stuff made the record. But yeah, Zigaboo was down there. And we had Ernie down there too, actually, playing guitar. We had Ernie during the NWA stuff, and I think during the Chronic stuff, but I did jam with Ernie also. I forgot about that. So yeah, I was able to jam with those guys as well.
Oh, wow, okay. Yeah, thanks, thank you.
You're welcome, you're welcome. Well, thank you guys for all coming out. Yeah. So I don't know how many students are here, but I'll be at the school, I think, all week. So I'll be here for your disposal. And then we'll be doing another thing at the Moogfest. On the Moogfest, I think starts on the 18th in Durham. But then I think I'll be there on May 20th at 5:45, right? So I'll see you guys around town. Yep.